So I've got a couple of simple goals for this particular workshop. First of all, maybe put it in the chat, I guess, if you've used a Brightspace gradebook before, what you, yeah, let's just start with that. Now, I will say, whether we're talking about Moodle or Brightspace or the learning management systems, Um, the using the gradebook is a great way to provide ongoing feedback to your students. Um, they can track how they're doing the course. They don't always have to come to you. Um, how am I doing the course and so forth. And so getting comfortable with the gradebook is in whatever LMS you're using is a good thing. What I want to do today is just go through uh, a couple of basic grading scenarios. I know as I work with faculty, there's lots of different ways faculty like to approach the grades and assessments in their courses. Um, what I want to do is cover a couple of basic approaches to gradebook that cover a big majority of how faculty work with the gradebook in Brightspace. So with that, let me let me go ahead and I'll start sharing my screen and just walk through some of the steps in setting up the gradebook for a couple of different grading scenarios. We'll talk about how to add Brightspace activities and manually added activities to the gradebook and take a little look about managing and entering grades once the gradebook is set up. So without any further ado, let me start sharing. And what I'm going to do is just take this course space that I set up for the workshops this morning, and I will pretend that there are all sorts of the students enrolled, which there aren't. I will actually add you all later as students so that you can have access to the resources that I'm accumulating for all of the workshops, but haven't done that yet because a lot of you are just now getting the invitation to join. So if I go to the course home for this or any course, under course management, you will find grades. And this will get you into the gradebook. Um, Depending on your personal preference, you might land here on the enter grades page. And of course, I've got nothing set up in the gradebook, so there's no way that I can enter any grades. So the first step would be to, get your gradebook, the basic features of the gradebook set up. Um, and I really encourage faculty to do at least the basic scheme of the gradebook right at the beginning of the semester so that as you add things to your course, there's a scaffolding to put them into. Now there is a setup wizard. Um, I tend not to use it myself. And for the purposes of this workshop, I want to go straight here to manage grades. The setup wizard will walk you through step by step through a number of the things that I'm going to focus on. But here under manage grades, over here you see settings. This settings option gives you direct access to the kinds of things that the setup wizard would ask you about. So I'm going to go over here, click on settings. And there are a variety of personal options you can set. So none of these necessarily needs to be um, tweaked, although I do find it useful, or you might find it useful, especially if you have a complicated grade book that has a lot of columns in it. You might want to repeat um, at the end of the whole long list, there will be the calculated final grade and the adjusted final grade. And we'll talk about what the difference of those are in later. But by default, you have showing up in your spreadsheet view of the grade book, the calculated final grade showing up both at the start and the end of the list. You can turn that on and off, and you can do the same thing with the adjusted grade. But if you don't want, the defaults on personal display items are generally pretty good. Org unit display items, I mean, you can tweak some of these if you want to have more or less precision displayed to students. You can control whether students are going to see the points grade, the weighted grade, the grade scheme symbol, and so forth. These defaults are also reasonable, depending, even if you are using either a points-based grading schema or a weighted averages grading schema. And the real meat of the gradebook setup here is under calculation options. So here's where I want to go through some, fundamental choices that you're going to want to make. And in my notes here for the session, which I will share around to you later, I'm going to go through a couple of basic approaches that I've seen when I've worked with faculty on gradebook. Some faculty say, well, I know I've got X number of items and I want to assign a point value to each of them, and they're going to add up to a certain total, and that's how I'm going to structure my gradebook. Very straightforward, very simple. So, two 100-point midterms, and I've got a final that's 150 points. So it's a little bit more of that. I know I'm going to have 10 assignments during the course. They're 10 points each. That's 100 points. And they're going to do a paper for the course. I'm going to make that 50. So we've got 200, 350, 450, 500 points. So my course, the work you're going to do, students in my course, the work you're going to do in my course is going to add up to a total of 500 possible points. And your points are going to just add up to that. So that's a very straightforward way. The other approach, and this approach I tend to use more, is to identify, well, what are the assessments I'm going to have in my class? So I'm going to have some exams. I'm going to have a final paper. I'm going to have some quizzes. I'm going to have some in-class assignments. I'm going to have class participation. And once I know the categories of what I'm going to have students do for assessments, then I can figure out, well, how important are each of them? I'm going to make exams about a third of the course. I'm going to make them 35%. The final papers, 25%. These other things, that adds up to 50. That adds up to 60. And then quizzes and assignments and class participation, 20%, 10%, 10%. This all adds up to 100%. And so students, 100% is what, you're striving for. And these are the things that you can work on to get up to that 100%. So let me talk about how each of those would be implemented in the grade book. Here by going again to course management grades, getting in to the grade book, clicking on settings, go into the calculation options. So let's do the first example first, because that's easy to set up, and then I'm going to clear it out. So that would be points based. So again, I've got two exams worth 100 points, final worth 150 points, so forth. So I'm just going to make that change, and we'll talk about some of these other things later. I'm going to save that. And now if I again go back into course management grades and click on manage grades. Um, oh, I've already cluttered up the course by adding some assignments. Let me quick, get rid of those. So let me go back in, course management, grades, manage grades, and they didn't go away. Me. Well, I'll just deal with them. Should have done these workshops in the order and had the grade book one before the voice tray one. So if we go to manage grades here, I can add a new grade item. For this scenario, I'm not going to worry about categories or anything like that. It's just going to be very straightforward, simple um, um, grading schema. I'm going to add these are all going to be numeric items. You know, exam one, and there are no categories. And I told the students it's going to be out of 100 points. A lot of options here that we don't need to talk about for this kind of overview workshop. And you'll see that, exam one now shows up here and it's 100 points. And I can do the same thing for the other items. And you get the idea, right? So if you've got a very simple, we've got these 12 things we're going to do, and they add up to 100, add up to 500 points. Then you can just again go into the settings under calculation options, select the points option, and then just add your items here. Make sure that the final calculated grade adds up to the total point value that you're planning on for your points-based grade book. It's all simple, all very straightforward. Okay. But not very flexible at the end of the day. Let's say instead of 10 assignments, I ended up having 12. Or maybe I want to have quizzes, but I don't know at the beginning of the semester, am I going to have, how many quizzes am I going to have? Because that's something I might, vary on the fly. Um, and so that's why when I work with a lot of faculty, they say, well, here are the kinds of things I'm going to have, and here are the weights that I'm going to want to give to them. And so let's go back into the settings option over here. And again, well, one thing you might want to change here under personal display options is where do you want to start in the gradebook? And at the beginning of the semester, you might want to default to the Manage Grades page because you're working on building your gradebook. Later, when the gradebook is built and you're more concentrated on entering grades, you can change that back. I'll come over here to calculation options and we'll select weighted instead. And I'll save that. And so if we go back over here to this grading schema, I said I was going to have exams and I was going to have a final paper and quizzes and in-class assignments and class participation discussion. Exams is plural, so they're going to be more than one. You know, maybe we're going to have two midterms and a final, but now I just want them in this exams bucket. So with the weighting schema, we're going to spend much more time setting up categories. I'm going to have a category for exams. I'm going to have a category for quizzes. I'm going to have a category for in-class assignments and a category for class participation. Final paper, you know, maybe there's only one item, so you don't necessarily have to create a category, a bucket to put that into. But on your paper, you might have a whole set of intermediate grades. You know, you might have a grade for the annotated bibliography. You might have a grade for the first draft. You might have a grade for the final draft. And you want each one of those to have different contributions. So if I'm using a weighted schema, even if I'm doing something that is a single item, I tend to set up categories for it just to make things consistent in the gradebook. So let's go back in here. I have made that change, and now under Manage Grades, I can start creating those categories. So I can say exams, and I like to just reinforce to the students over and over again, you know, what they're talking about here. So exams, 30%, and I'm going to give it a weight of 35. And this is a bucket. There are going to be multiple items within that bucket. I have to tell Brightspace how am I going to assign the relative contribution of each of those items in the exams category to the category score. The default is to manually assign a weight to each item in the category. And I'll leave it at that for exams here. You could have the point values of the items in the category drive the weights. Or you can distribute the weight evenly across all the items. So quizzes, for example, you know, one quiz might be, I might grade one quiz out of 8 points because of the questions I ask. I might grade another quiz out of 10 points, another quiz out of 12 points, and so forth. Question here is, do you want all those quizzes to count the same toward the quizzes category, even though they're different point values? Or do you want Brightspace to take the point values into account? Or do you manually want to tell Brightspace how important each of the quizzes are? That's basically your options there. So if I save and close this, oh, cannot, okay. Exams. So now I have an exams category in here, and you know, theoretically I want to move these two exams into, no, not that one. Well, this is embarrassing. It's been so long since I've done this. I don't remember how to move the items um, into the category. Let's just delete them all. So here's my clean grade book. I am now starting with this grading schema. I want exams to be 35%. You can see we've got a weight here of 35. I have an error message or a warning message up here in that final calculated grade only adds up to 35%, not 100%. Okay, so we'll fix that over time. I want a final paper that is 25%. So let me add a new category. Final paper. And that's going to be 25%. And let's save and close. Now get a message. Well, you're at 60%, not 100. So let's keep going. We got quizzes. %20%. Assignments, 10%. Now I'm going to say I'm going to distribute the weight equally across all items. And that way it doesn't matter whether, you know, I grade some assignments on a 10-point scale and some assignments on a 20-point scale. They all are going to count the same. Now, actually, let me for assignments use this one. And you see, I've got some error messages up here as well. You go back into quizzes and edit that. Quizzes, I'm going to turn to distribute weight evenly across all items. So now Brightspace knows how to handle items that get put into the quizzes category. That warning about quizzes goes away. These I'm just going to leave for now. Those will go away once we get some items in those categories. And then the last thing I have to do is class participation. And again, every time students do something that contributes to participation, there's going to be an item in the grade book, and I'm just going to have Brightspace average over all of those for now. Save and close. And the warning message about final calculated grade goes away because everything now does add up to 100%. Let's go ahead and manually add the items for the paper for the exams. Because in this, I'm assuming this is a face-to-face class. I'm going to be giving these exams in class. I'm going to be grading them, and then I basically just need some items in the grade book where I can enter in those grades. So I'm going to now add some grade items. And my midterm 1 is a numeric thing. I'm going to put it into the exams category. I'm going to make it at 100 points. And click Save and Close. And now you see that midterm 1 is under exam 1. Same thing with midterm 2. And here's where I didn't have to delete those items that I added before. Here's where I could have gone back in and edited the item to put it into a category once I had set up some categories. I'll save and close. We've got midterm 2. We've got 2 things here. And then I'll add one more for the final. And it's going to be under exams as well, and I'm going to make it 150 points. There's some options here. You can add bonus items that add to the student's score without adding to the course total. Extra credit items. You can add rubrics to items for your grading purposes. You can allow scores greater than the maximum. You need to be very careful about that because if you accidentally put in 1,000 points for a 100-point exam, that can really skew your grading schema. So now I'm still getting this message, exams sums to 35% because it's looking at the weights here. So I'm going to go in to edit the exams category. And I actually do want the 100, the 100, and the 150 to represent how important they are. So I'm going to select this option to distribute weights by points across all items in the category. I'll save and close there. And now that error message goes away. We've got some weird weights in here now, but basically the 100 and 100 and 150 add up to 350 maximum points. And so 100 out of 350 points is 28%. So the first midterm and the second midterm are going to be 56% of what students get for their exams, and the final is this remaining. Okay. Actually, let me go ahead and delete this category for final paper just to show you that you can mix and match categories and items. Let's say you are going to have just students are turning in their paper to you and you're gonna grade it. And so rather than adding it as a category, I could have gone ahead and added that as an item. I'm going to call it final paper. It's not in the category. It's up at the main level. It's going to be 10% of the grade, but maybe I want to grade the paper on a 25-point scale. And I'll save and close that. And now we have Oh, paper was 25%, not 10%. So the paper is worth 25% of the grade, and I'm going to score the papers on a 100-point scale. That's a better example. Okay. So all of the warning messages are gone here. I've got a category for exams. These are all manually graded, manually added to the scores, manually added to the grade book. Quizzes, I might do quizzes in class. I might do quizzes in Brightspace. Assignments, same thing. I might do assignments in class. I might do assignments in Brightspace. So, let's just go into the Brightspace gradebook module, and let's say I'm going to create a new assignment. I'm going to call it assignment 1. Really creative thinking this morning in Brightspace. And rather than it being ungraded, it's going to be, I'm going to grade it as a 10-point item. I want it in the grade book, and I'm going to make it due, next month sometime. And here's what you need to do for this assignment. So this is creating a new assignment. It's going to create an assignment activity in the content area. That's going to be attached to an assignment that's listed in the assignments part of your Brightspace course. You've told Brightspace that it's not going to be ungraded. It's going to be 10 points by default. When you assign point value to it, Brightspace thinks it's going to be in the gradebook. But you can have graded activities that for some reason you want to give a grade on, but you don't want it to show up in the grade book. You can select that option, and I'll click Save and Close. What you will see is that if we go into grades again, I need to edit that assignment, and it really needs to go into the assignments category. Save and close, and it shows up where it's supposed to show up, and the weight on the final calculated grade is back at 100%, and so forth. So if you create quizzes in Brightspace, again, you would want to attach them to the gradebook the way I just did with the assignment. If instead what you're doing is you're giving a quiz in class, you can add it as a grade item just as we did before. In class quiz 1. And obviously I want that to be in the quizzes category. And, it happens to be a 12-point quiz. Weights don't matter because I've told Brightspace every item that's in the quizzes category has an equal weight. And so just take the percentages that students get on each of the individual ones and average those. And if I click Save and Close, you'll see the quiz show up here. Now, with the assignment, obviously you would go in, let's go back out to the course home. Once students have submitted their assignments, you would go in and grade those assignments in the not that. In the Brightspace interface, and then those scores that you do on the assignment would be automatically transferred to the gradebook. I'm more interested for today in just talking about entering grades. Oh, and of course, I have no users to grade. Um, hmm. Karen, I'm going to add you to the. Oops, I'm going to go up here, add existing users. And search for Karen. And I'm going to add her to this workshop class as a student. And I'll do that for all of you so that once I get resources up into these spaces, you can have access to them. But for now, I just want Karen in the roster so I can go to grades here. And if I go to enter grades, you see this extensive roster here for the class, and I can enter grades for the first midterm. Get this um, field here where I can say, well, Karen did pretty good on the first exam. She got a 92. And I'll save and close. So you can go through in this kind of spreadsheet view. It's a little bit awkward not having a real class, but I can save and close that. What I would tend to do probably with a real class is to, if I'm going to grade, the 18 midterms, I might be tallying up scores for the midterm in an Excel spreadsheet. There is an option here to import grades. This Brightspace will give you a format for setting up a CSV file where you can bulk import the grades. But I do want to make sure that I save us some time for questions. So, I mean, the main point here is for most faculty, there's a couple of different ways of setting up the overall schema for your gradebook. Either I know I'm going to just want to add up points on a discrete number of items from my class. I can use the points option and just set up those items in my grade book and then just enter the grades for each of the items, and it all adds up to some number of points out of 500, or some number of points out of 1,000, or some number of points out of 100. I've seen lots of different schemas when working with different faculty. That's simple, it's straightforward. The weighted means is a lot more flexible. You can just tell your students at the beginning of the semester, hey, we're going to have quizzes. They're going to make up 25% of the grade. And there's going to be a category in your Brightspace gradebook where all those quizzes are tallied up, and you can see what's going on as you go forward. There is one one key thing I do need to mention before I stop sharing and we see if there are any questions. I'm going to go back into grades here. And again, I'm going to go to settings and go to calculation options. This option for ungraded items is a critical decision you need to make. The default is, well, if you've got an item in your grade book and as Brightspace, I don't have a grade for that student yet, I'm going to not factor it into the calculation. That's in many ways a good default. Because let's say you have set up your grade book with, you've got your let's say you're doing the points value. You've got your midterm 1, midterm 2, final, the 10 quizzes and the paper and everything adds up to 500 points. If you select this option to treat ungraded items as 0, students are going to look in the grade book at the beginning of the semester or maybe a third of the way through the semester, and most of the things haven't been graded yet. They're all going to be treated as zeros and your students are going to freak out, right? Why am I getting a 17% in the course? By using the default, anything that you haven't graded yet doesn't calculate into what students see for their calculated grade at the time. And so this gives them a better idea of how they've done so far on the things that have happened and that you have graded. However, you have to be very conscientious to put a 0 in for students who don't submit work on an item, so that 0 actually gets counted. I have worked with faculty say, no, I want all of my students to start the beginning of the semester at 0. And as they go through the semester, they add up points and they're building their way up to the 500 total points. So that's really your philosophical approach to how you want to give students feedback as the semester is going along. I think more faculty use the default option here where things that haven't been graded or where there's not a grade score given for a student on an item, that doesn't factor into the ongoing calculated grade for the student, so that ongoing calculated grade gives the student an idea of, well, how am I doing on the stuff that's happened so far? But there are faculty I work with that say, yeah, no, I think it's clear if the students realize they start out with nothing in terms of points that they've accumulated, and they accumulate points over the course of the semester. So, think about that as you're thinking about setting up your grade book. And then one last thing, I'll just say, is if I go into the grade book under the enter grades part, you'll see at the end here, there is a final calculated grade, and there is the option for an adjusted calculated grade. Final calculated grade is there by default. It is just keeping track of the items that you've entered in and the weights or the point values that you've assigned based on the grading schema. And this percentage at the end of the semester will represent the percentage that the student got out of that grading schema. You have the option to, if you have a habit of adjusting those calculated grades, let's say you've got some opportunities for students to bump their grade up in ways that you don't actually want to put in. It's too complicated to put into the grade book, but you want to have the final say to take a student's 73% and make it a a 78, you have the option to do that here under the final adjusted grade. But with that, let me see if there are questions. Uh, what let me also give you this. I have found in working with faculty that how they approach grades is very idiosyncratic. And so my best advice is always, yeah, come to a workshop like this to get a kind of a foundational overview, but then make an appointment with me or with Marie, and we'll go through exactly what you want to do and make sure your grade book is set up the way you want it to be set up. But in terms of your question here, Laura, um, an extra credit column. Again, if we go, let me go back to share my screen. And if I go into manage grades and I want to have an extra credit quiz, for example, that doesn't, in this case, it's not course-wide, but it is, how can I add an item here under quizzes where students can get points in an extra credit kind of fashion that doesn't, that just is, kind of fully additive onto what they're getting for their quizzes. Again, it would be just adding a new item and a numeric item, and I'm going to have them, let's say, I'm going to call it bonus quiz, and I'm going to make it 10 points. And here I'm going to just click the bonus. And let's make sure that I put it in the right category. And now if I click save and close, that quiz shows up under the quizzes category. Students can get as much as 10 points on it, but you can see it's got this little star here, which indicates to you that it's a bonus grade item. So let's say over the other 12 quizzes that the students has taken, they've gotten, they're doing like 72% on the quizzes. They take this bonus quiz and they get another 8 points out of the 10. Those 8 points get added basically to the contribution to the quizzes without adding into the denominator. So that's going to bump their quizzes score up a bit. Let's see. If both faculty are in the course with instructor roles, they both have managing grades, entering grades, access on the grade book. So that should be no problem. If you are encountering a problem, I mean, the way Banner's set up, one of you probably is the instructor of record on the course in Banner. And when the enrollment data gets pushed from Banner to Brightspace, that person's going to be clearly set up as the instructor on the course. Other instructors can be manually added. We just have to make sure they get manually added in the faculty role, the instructor non-cascading role. And then they would have all the rights and privileges on the grade book that the instructor of record would have. Yeah, and Laura, if you don't want to use categories, you can just add all the items, kind of using a points-based system schema like we talked about. Um, there, there is a way, obviously, to shuffle items up and down in the grade book. I haven't been into any of my active grade books for quite some time yet, but if you add them in sequence, corresponding to how they occur in your course, they should automatically be in that proper order. If you need some help making sure that the items in your grade book show up in the sequence that you want your students to see them at, just send us an email and we'll help you through that. Any other questions? If not, I'm going to stop the recording and